In the program, this program is this slide showing the title Legible Transport Networks is showed in the program, and as part of that presentation I would have liked to show you the huge potential of seamless travel, and particularly some smashing examples of regional tramways. Like behind me, the huge potential of regional cross-border tramways, like the proposal of Nijmegen-Kleef. And it's no coincidence, by the way, that most of those corridors, potentially or already in existence, are covered by this famous banana. But for various reasons, I have to change my presentation, and I want to discuss with you my ideas on incremental light rail planning. And I will try to explain what I mean with it and why I think it's necessary to act with a more opportunistic attitude instead of a naive, rational planning paradigm in mind. Well, what happened? I was involved in projects in the city of Arnhem and Nijmegen for several years, and one of those projects was actually the start of the Sint-Rover project for Nijmegen-Kleef. And well, I was in a meeting in Lille some years ago, and I met Peter Hall, and it was a very interesting meeting, and I was very enthusiastic about the project. So the start was really smashing for me. Meanwhile, I worked on several other projects. For instance, this one, the Groningen project, a very interesting project in many respects. It was a very sound preparation. It was a challenging experiment with a new kind of contracting, design, build, finance, maintain and operate, with a plus, because operation was covered by the contract, but also the procurement of rolling stock. And as such, these are not a new kind of contract, DBFMO, but for a tramway project, and certainly for a Northwestern European tramway project, it was a very challenging, fancy way of working. The planning was okay, and the tendering was almost finished in October 2012, and for a variety of reasons, politicians of the city of Groningen decided to pull the plug. So the construction should have been started this year, but the construction was cancelled, the project was cancelled. And also the phase 2, the regional extension of the project, has been cancelled forever. Luckily, in my own country, there are still some successful projects, like Randstadrail, which is a huge success. Many other countries as well, successful projects like Valenciennes, another Sint-Rover project, by the way. In France, of course, I like the regional tramways or regional operations with trams on, for instance, the region of Lyon. We can discuss the value of this project because there's no full service, but I think on the long run it will be very meaningful, and it's just a starter as being an optimistic guy. And there are many other projects as well, very successful. But a lot of these projects has been put forward as transportation project and justified by, I think, a rather limited amount of arguments. So maybe it's well known already, but I like to show you what I call the 5 E's, which some 5 chapters actually of argumentation and justification for high quality public transportation, like light rail. And the first is, well-known argument is efficiency. Transport is is meeting demand. You can use with high quality transport. It's possible to make more efficient use of your limited public space, etc. It's helped with traffic design and planning. So this is the first E, efficiency. The second one, I forgot something important. I always, when I try to explain the efficiency argument, I make use of those three very nice examples with the one which are, in fact, show in a very thorough and convincing way that rail-based urban transport can be very efficient. The first two slides show the ring tramways of Budapest and of Paris. And the third picture shows the Amsterdam tram serving the historical center in very narrow streets. And it would be simply unthinkable to use another mode rather than trams in this particular situations. So it's obvious that there are many cases that the tramway, rail-based public transport is the only efficient option in these cases. Then the enhancement, second E. Well, this is more or less inspired by the practice of well-known practice in France. So there are many opportunities when you are dealing with a tramway project in an urban environment to make use of it in a broader way, in the sense that you improve the quality of the city. It is a great help for urban planning and design, etc. So it's a well-known argument. For instance, the picture is for the city of Reims. It's a very interesting project, very successful already. And the picture alone shows that public transport with trams is a good means to improve your city. But the most important E's are the number 3, 4, and 5, well known, the 3 E's. And the first is the environmental issue. Maybe very obvious for you in other countries in Europe, but I must admit that, unfortunately, that in the Netherlands, this E, the first E of environment, is not an issue, has never been an issue actually in any of the public transport projects of the last 25 years, which is rather awkward actually, but this is the truth. So the first E of those three is maybe one of the most important one on the long run. And to give some indirect proof of it, I show the graph on the right-hand side of the sheet, and it depicts the relation between density and the amount of energy is used for transportation. On the right-hand side, bottom, is Hong Kong, and Atlanta City is left on top. So it means that Atlanta, as a very low-dense city, has the highest energy consumption for transportation compared to all the others. And unfortunately, most of the European cities are somewhere in the middle. But it shows that low-dense cities, hence cities with a low-dense public transport network, performs very, very bad regarding energy consumption. Then the second, economy. Well, there are a lot of there is some proof that there are a lot of economic effects once the public transport is of a better quality than the average quality of a bus. So investment in trams could have economic benefits. And certainly there is a relation between the quality of a rail-based infrastructure and, for instance, land and real estate value. That's true. But maybe a more important effect is that this infrastructure allows you to act actively in the sense of property development. So it's maybe not a causal effect, but it is more or less a very favorable condition for economic development. And there are good practices regarding this in many cities in the United States, for instance. Then, personally, I think this is the number 5, the equity E, is in fact the most important argument to enhance and augment the public transport in European cities and American cities as well. But because, well, though the success of economy is quite obvious in many places in Europe, there are many rich countries, I think it's very challenging to cope with the problem of how to deal with, with how to deal with the fact that a lot of people of middle class will become poor, and the distinction between low and high-rise class is becoming much more sharper than it used to be. And so the equity argument is a very important argument, because public transport allows people to connect to their work, etc. And it's difficult to give very hard proof regarding this, but I'm working on two case studies, a historic one and a very actual one. The historic case study is about Watts in LA. And you should know that in the early 60s, in fact, all the public transport of Los Angeles was demolished. The last regional tramway ceased to exist in 1961. And in my case study, I found several sources who connect this event, the disruption of the service between Watts and Long Beach on the one hand and downtown LA on the other hand, that they found that there's a connection between the social appraisal and the riots a few years later. So, because that's the conjecture, the public transport will cease to exist. People were disconnected from social life, and in particular were disconnected from their work. And so there's at least a decisive reason for the social problems in the very same period. And the second case is Detroit. There are plans for a bus or a tram, and the picture, the map, shows the central city of Detroit, and it's obvious that the dark red, that people without any means of transportation, without a car, are very adjacent to the projected new routes of the still missing public transport. Okay, it's very obvious that those 5 E's could be very important, and maybe you all know them already, but personally I don't know any project from the last 25 years which was justified and by means of a comprehensive story, argumentation of these 5 E's. And well, that's perhaps a big challenge to do the next 30 years or so, because a lot of projects are like the one in Sint-Trover are in trouble, or are killed, or aren't even projects. And Nijmegen-Kleef is a nice example of that. As I told you, I was very enthusiastic about the project when I was involved in the early stage in Lille in 2009. But as a matter of fact, it has never been a project, to be honest. So what is a project? Well, an initiative or an idea is not yet a project. The newspaper, this German newspaper, says that the Dutch want to have a light rail connection to Düsseldorf. And that illustrates the fuzziness of the idea to have a connection with Kleef. Because this idea is a very interesting idea, by the way, but it has nothing to do with the idea to connect Nijmegen with Kleef. 2 minutes? Okay. And therefore, because of those initiatives next to each other, the focus of the project was missing, and the idea to make a real implementation out of it was very, very difficult to accomplish. In fact, it has been a feasibility study regarding the connection between two cities, and the feasibility study is not yet has not been a real project. It didn't help that also the connection between the airport was part of the project, because regional airports are very hard to serve with public transportation. And if you know known in the aviation world, you should have known in advance. So what is a project? So these are the basic characteristics of a project. That's quite obvious. Though a lot of projects or near projects don't cover all those issues, but for instance, many of the France did, like the one in Mulhouse. Okay, the problem is that a lot of projects have been killed during the last 25 years. This is an overview, and I was involved in several of these projects, so maybe I have the reason for it, but remarkable, for instance, is the city of Aachen in Germany. They pulled the plug twice, like in Hamburg as well. So there are many missed opportunities. I like the example of Reims in 1995. It was killed, but as you know, eventually there was a second project. And hopefully the same will happen in my own city of Utrecht in the Netherlands. And a lot of projects encountered severe problems, even successful Fransband. So what are the reasons for the failure of these projects? Well, here are some. These are the well-known things which are covered in common risk assessment analysis. And there are some more. But I want to point out the three bold ones. The technocratic attitude, conceiving the planning process as a rational process, and the project focus and context. Well, I try to explain. For instance, the idea of total control and rational planning. I think the complexity of light rail in an urban environment doesn't allow for a very simple, straightforward rational planning. That's my first thing. The second is that that beyond even thinking about rational planning is that is a rather technocratic attitude of the people involved in these projects, like me, I'm being honest. And well, the best example of such an attitude is the idea to have a fixed contract and to cover all issues in advance and calculate them, etc. I have 10 seconds now. So towards a new approach, this was the focus of my presentation. I will give you a few examples, very short, a few seconds, of how to escape from this narrow rational planning theory and to come to a new paradigm of incremental planning. And the idea, what inspired me was the example of Mulhouse, for instance. Very rational project, by the way, but I was impressed the way they were justifying the project. For instance, one of the key elements in the project was a smashing design for a tree structure, green structure with many new trees in the cities. So the why was very good. It was not about technocratic what to do and how to do it, but the why was very elaborated. This is my favorite example in the United States. Portland, Oregon, in fact, shows many of the new things that you could do to evolve your public transport system. And again, same counts for the streetcar operations in the city. Then my example of Utrecht is the fact it was chopped in parts, this project, and it was already something in construction before the final decision would have been made to go on as a tramway project. And as a matter of fact, the decision to make a tramway still has to be taken. And this is my baby, the tramway of Aruba, a very simple project accomplished in 2 years of time. So it was, well, maybe you can make a laugh out of it. It's maybe a toy system, but it shows that if you have a simple starter system, already allows you to improve the city with simple means. Alicante is a very nice example. There are huge problems in Alicante. The starter system was there as well, and it has been closed a few months ago. But all in all, by commencing and working on several projects in time, they succeeded to have a network at last, despite the huge problems in the economy. And this is my last slide. I love this one. It was the starter of light rail in America, and the Triano trolley was a very simple project, but it created an irreversible fact. And eventually they could build a real big system out of it. Thanks.